learned at Harvard, but because of the network you've gained and the prestige of the name. How do you attack that in trying to get the world to adopt these and accept these models?
I start off with that. First of all, with folks like Cisco, it's becoming easier to do anatomy, physiology, and math. Originally, in the days of online learning, philosophy was good and math and chemistry were no good, because 20 years ago, you couldn't get math and chemical symbols into a learning management system. Today, we can see everything. So these folks are enabling us to bring the rest of the university along with us, number one. Number two is, you're right, it is a brand. You go to a good school to meet the right folks for your business later on in life, and you're probably not going to do that at different schools. And the question I have is, why haven't the big branded colleges gone online early? In other words, why hasn't some big online, some branded college 30 years ago, why haven't they done that 15 years ago and crushed the rest of us? And for some reason, they didn't do it. I believe it's because of the governmental structure and faculty structure of universities, where many faculty who have a lot of power don't want to change the way they're doing for good reason, and they sort of prevented it. So I've been a part of many institutions over the years where we sort of couldn't get there, and I thought we could. It's a political thing, not anything else.
I'll take a shot at two of those things. The better and worse programs, it's a little bit counterintuitive. The fact is that online education molds itself around the real world in some ways a lot better than a campus environment. So for instance, in a teaching program, the practicum, the student teaching, becomes the center of it, and all the formal instruction goes around that. And same thing with our nursing program. So the toughest things are lab programs, but almost everything else is pretty straightforward. In terms of the network effect, and I couldn't agree more, that's a critical part of going to a great university. It turns out that if you look at the US News rankings, there's a slightly negative correlation. The larger a school is, the higher its rankings are in the thing. The expectation is small is good. The reality, by any metrics, are good is good. And actually, if you're flooding a zone, if you're a school in Boston and everybody's going to work basically in Boston and New York, some number of students becomes enough that you can flood the zone. If you're global, you've got to be several orders of magnitude larger.
I'd like to also add that one of the strengths of the American higher education system is its diversity, the diversity of institutional types, and it may be hard for some institutions to realize, and maybe even some people in this room to realize, probably not in this room though, is that not everybody aspires to go to what is called an elite institution. That go back 20 years, Chester Finn posited a whole new sort of context for higher education, a whole new, new system, set aside the Carnegie system with the R1, R2, et cetera, et cetera. He said there's going to be elites, there's going to be boutique institutions, and then there's going to be the mass market institutions. And institutions that aren't going to be able to position themselves strategically to fit into and to serve those types of markets are going to die. And that's really what we see happening right now. Institutions are falling off. But within all of those different categories of institutions, there are networks that are wonderful. I mean, I serve a very specific kind of a network of 17 million people that has its own interrelationships and its own social associations that are very important. We're not an elite institution. So I think we want to think much more broadly about diversity in higher ed.
Hello, my name is Eric Ramey. I'm with Gettysburg College, which is a small liberal arts college. And I'm kind of curious, my question's mostly for Frank, because we've heard a lot about analytics and using it to try to figure out what students are going to fall off the edge and everything else. My first question is, how did you go about developing these models? Where did you get that information, and how did you figure out was it 82 variables or whatever that track? And the second question is, when you're talking back to the issue of diversity, we're a small liberal arts college, lots of touch, not a lot of distance. And the question is, do you see those same models being able to be applied to other areas, or is each person going to have to customize and all the rest? I
believe that the real revolution in online learning has not been in the online learning, it's been the regular classroom. It's changed the way we look from teaching to learning has gone because of online learning. By the way, I believe Gettysburg College, one of those wonderful boutique colleges, is going to survive because you are in a certain niche. It's a good thing to be in. We collect everything because we're digital online. So from the application to their grades, we have a digital thing. We had IBM help us with the consulting grant, where they brought this thing called Model, called Clementine. Now, I'm on thin ice here because my data folks aren't in the room here. We got all these various 82 things. Actually, we had hundreds of them, and the modeler figured out which 82 were important. It found correlations, and it found collections of things, and it found if these 4 things happened, the student is likely to do one thing or the other. If you read the literature on retention from the very beginning, you're going to find out that students don't drop out of college, they drop out from a particular college. Students leave my college for a different reason they leave your college. So once we figured out where our students dropped out and what those patterns were, we mapped that pattern over and then was able to test it. And I'll share the data with you afterwards. I'll give you my card and show you how we've done it.
And Frank, can I ask a quick follow-up question, which is, how much data are you actively mining? Can you quantify it?
I think we have 170,000 records, and we have I think something like 250 variables that we're running it all the time. We burned out several machines doing it.
Right, and this is terabytes, not
terabytes,
not,
and we have PhDs in statistics who are writing on the board things I can't understand. I trust they know what they're doing. I hope.
Another question?
Hi, I'm Steve Quattrochalki. I'm president of Corinthian College's online learning group. And I wanted to ask about faculty and scale. Obviously, faculty are key to the delivery of instruction. It's also, we found, key to getting students to engage in any technology you pick, and also curriculum development. And I know, John, you rely on the university faculty that you work with, so I'd like you to speak as to how you work with those traditional faculty to get used to the online environment and how you scale up that faculty as the online population grows. And Frank, I think you said 700 faculty with 77,000 students?
There's like 1,700 faculty.
Okay. How do you build a faculty community? How are they involved in curriculum development? And how do you, again, scale that as you grow as well?
The real, well, it's a big question, and the first part is just that that the faculty pretty much every single person on the faculty considers themselves the guardian of the university's brand. And it's a gauntlet at first. You have to convince them that actually this is going to make the world a better place in a variety of ways, make the school better and extend its reach. In terms of running it, I tend to think of the world as you deconstruct into, this is the lead faculty member, this is his course, he's thinking it through, we're spending months with him thinking through that course and thinking through its narrative arc, we're changing it on an ongoing basis and evolving it based on the data and based on his own feelings about what's working and what isn't. And then there is clinical faculty that's doing a lot of the individual teaching. So if a great school, it's a mix of asynchronous and synchronous, all of the lecture materials, all the simulations and animations, everything we do, which is never going to be a talking head video, everything we do before a student gets to class or after is guided by the lead faculty. The clinical faculty are running sections of around 20 students and taking it, both leading their asynchronous conversations and leading their synchronous sessions every week. In fact, we break it into 2 classes of 10, so incredibly intense conversations. And then both groups of faculty are meeting weekly to discuss how the course is going, what's going on. So if you take one lead research tenure track faculty member, marry him to or marry her to 2 or 3 clinical faculty members, you actually end up with a team that's really, really effective and that sees itself as such.
Yeah, we're broken down into schools and then departments, and we try to make sure that there's Facebook groups and various other things where the faculty can get together. Because we're totally virtual, most of our faculty never come in. I think we bring in like 500 a year at one time. That's not enough. We try to make sure there's enough Facebook stuff and enough events. There's something called the faculty lounge where they can go in. In fact, they're allowed to complain about me in there, et cetera. So we want to make sure there's a community where they can speak up. Also, too, faculty are going to die if you give them a course in a box to teach over and over again, and they're going to suck at teaching it. So they have to feel ownership. They have to feel good, or the education's no good. And by the way, just to agree earlier, it's not about the technology. As Carol said, it's through the technology. A good college is not about a computer or a modem or whatever. It's about good teaching and emphasis upon good teaching and rewarding good teaching.
If I could add one more comment to that, which is a bit of a different